told you 16's a bugger. Told you that yesterday. And we're going to need a couple more sips of coffee before we dive into this one. Right off the bat in 16, we have this really odd parable. It's been known as the parable of the unjust steward. And to put it bluntly, Jesus doesn't sound like Jesus. Now we need to be careful when we say something like that. Jesus doesn't sound like Jesus. Too often we want Jesus to fit into whatever our mold of him is. And often that is rather domesticated. We don't want Jesus to be unruly or threatening or harsh or mean. But yet he is all those things in the gospel and so much more. He is kind and compassionate. He is caring and loving. But, in the Gospel of Mark, he calls Peter Satan. Over and over again, he says really harsh things about the scribes and the Pharisees, insulting them directly, sometimes to their faces. So Jesus doesn't always fit into the mold of what we think. And this parable definitely doesn't fit into that mold either. So we have this steward who is apparently not doing a good job, and so he's going to get fired. And so he erases all the debts that are owed, not to him, but to his boss. And then somehow he's commended for this. It doesn't make any sense to us. The first time I ever heard this, it's in the lectionary. This is going to come up, I think, next August or next September. It's going to be the Sunday gospel. And I heard somebody preach on it, and he basically said that nobody knows what this means. Well, then I got into seminary, and in my first New Testament class, my very first semester, we had to pick a passage from one of the synoptic gospels, from Matthew, Mark, or Luke, and write an exegetical paper on it, where we try to interpret it scholarly, do a scholarly interpretation, basically. And so I picked this passage because I knew it was in the lectionary. I knew I was going to have to deal with it once I was a priest. And I read a bunch of commentaries. Nobody had the same answer. There was not a consensus. And pretty much every commentator was very hesitant in their interpretation. They weren't too confident in what they were saying. So basically, the thesis of my paper was nobody knows what this means. Somehow I stretched that into like 15 or 18 pages. But professor liked it and I got an A. But that doesn't help that much now, does it? Because years later, I read another commentator whose name escapes me at the moment, who pondered that maybe there's something to do with the debts. The steward is indebted to the boss, but the steward forgives the debts of the clients. And then it seems like the steward is forgiven. This commentator wrapped that into one of the translations of the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. And that this is a parable might be about forgiveness. If we can't truly know forgiveness of ourselves. We can't accept God's forgiveness of us unless we're willing to forgive others. And that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. Almost as hard as this parable. After this parable, we get some teachings, some different sayings that were probably said at different times and different places and separate from each other, but Luke compiles them and puts them together. And then it ends the chapter. Luke ends the chapter with the story of the rich ruler, or a rich man, I should say, who dressed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted every day while there were beggars at his gates, and did not know Lazarus, one of the beggars, did not help him at all, and winds up in hell, basically, is the way the story is told, and can't get out because he can't find his way to generosity. And he wants his brothers warned, and Jesus is like, there's plenty of warning already, in the law and the prophets, in Abraham and all the prophets. It's all there. The fact that we are to love others as we love ourselves, as one of us. Be they rich, be they poor, they are human, just like us, and should be shown the same attention and compassion as anyone else. That's connected somehow in the same chapter with this parable of the unjust steward, which doesn't clarify it all that much either. So this one's a struggle. It's a challenge. Invite your thoughts and what you think is going on, what you think this parable of the unjust steward means, how it relates to the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. There is a wonderful, if you can find it, it's the guy who wrote the Cotton Patch Gospels, and his name is escaping me. Hold on a second. I found it. The Cotton Patch Gospel version of Luke and Acts by Clarence Jordan. Clarence Jordan founded the Koinonia community, an interracial community out in Georgia, on a farm in Georgia, and he did it in the 1940s, early 1940s, so long before the Civil Rights Movement. And he's an interesting figure. But anyway, he wrote this sort of southern version of Luke and Acts, and he tells the story of Lazarus and the rich man. And there's actually an audio recording of this out there. I've heard it. I haven't been able to actually find it myself. If you can find it, it's great. It's him reading or telling the story of Lazarus and the rich man, but it's for his version from the Cotton Patch Gospels. It's very, very good. He takes a jab at Coca-Cola in it. That's quite artful, especially considering Atlanta is where the international headquarters of Coca-Cola is, and he was outside of Atlanta and very much part of Georgia culture. He had no fear. So I recommend that to you as well. And I hope you have a blessed day, and thank goodness tomorrow we get to do chapter 17. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We really hope you are enjoying these reflections on the Gospel of Luke. Stay tuned, as we're going to have some special guests joining us soon as we continue this chapter by chapter journey towards Christmas through this season of Advent with the Gospel of Luke. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button down below. Also, hit that thumbs up. That really helps out the video and increases our circulation and our proclamation of the gospel. And hit the bell. That way you're notified and you can stay on top of this devotional journey through the Gospel of Luke. Again, we hope you are enjoying these reflections, and we hope that you remember that no matter what, God loves you more than you can possibly imagine.